You see that
Oh my
Lawrenceville?
gosh.
You see that? It's
I know,
kind of
it's craziness. Oh, there's Susan.
I can't say we're on the low end.
Long time no see. Yeah.
But now they're routinely.
I know. I'm going to wear this tomorrow.
It used to be an old row house, but it was a corner
Tomorrow,
lot,
I
and
think
then
it's only
the
a
one
high of
next
like
to it was
55.
taken down.
Low
and they
is
put it.
high 30s.
So it's kind of a single-family
So
home in that
hopefully
area,
the sun will
which is
be
pretty
out
neat.
and warm things up a little bit. What's that?
Pretty
It's
safe.
been
I mean,
crazy.
Again,
yeah.
it's definitely a
So.
mixed area.
But you came
the
prepared
War
with your
Streets,
umbrella.
even Deutschtown
Hopefully,
are gentrifying quickly.
hopefully that's beyond us. Yeah.
So, yeah.
This evening,
Well, it's completely different.
I'd probably do the pants. It gets cold. Like once the sun goes down,
It's
it
the
gets
place
cold
for all
really
that
fast.
stuff,
The sides are up on the tent. It is heated. Actually, you're probably whatever you prefer, because I mean there's like 500 people signed up. For
We'd
this
love to
event,
have
so
you here.
With all the
We'd
people
love
in
to have you
there
here.
with the heaters on, it should be fine.
Maybe I'll just switch between that and. It should be a gold mine there. And
Didn't mean to scare you. Hiding in the back row. Thanks for stopping over. That was great.
The Wyndham, you mean? Yeah. I haven't actually seen the rooms there, so.
it's not bad.
Okay.
But when you walk in, I understand. Like we got there, it's not open for lunch because it's staffed.
Good. Well, I do want Joe and those guys to call you both, just talk to you, because they'll get a lot out of it now that we're ready to take that step. So, and we've actually seen our industry R&D money because coming
It's like
up
a
now,
ghost
finally.
town. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Okay, well, yeah, please. Yeah. Hey, Lisa.
Yeah. That's right.
I didn't even
We
know
found
that.
someone else.
Cassie gave them pizza from your office, so
Okay.
so they got their pizza, but I'm
As
not
long
sure
as
if it was
possible.
the thing that they
Exactly.
thought they were
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's right. That's right. So anyway,
all
but
right.
I remember
Well,
that
if you
early
guys wanna
discussion
go
we
ahead
had
and get
about how do we
seated, I'm
get
gonna
that
check in.
going. So I think we're
How are we?
finally beginning to see the beginnings of it. But,
Announcement.
so
Yeah.
folks are ready to take a more,
You can't. Where's
lean
the
into it a
chancellor,
little bit
though?
more than they were before. So anyway,
Oh, he's here.
yeah.
Go out the door.
Anyway, want to say hello
Here.
again? All right.
When you make the announcement, he'll come up. But
This morning.
I was going to let them know just to make sure they. To kind of encourage
right.
just go tap shoulders.
Sure.
Good.
Okay. Hi, Shelly.
That's
Good. How are
great.
you? Oh, it was such a fun event.
Right.
It could all be like that.
Well, you guys work hard. I mean, that's what I felt you guys needed was just
Yes,
what's
yeah.
going on. Right?
It didn't feel.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Is that everyone?
No, right.
That's what's that?
Or vice versa, right.
Okay. Okay. They're like, oh, before we get yelled at. Yeah.
Right. Hey, good to see you. Good. Happy homecoming.
Thank you.
You're kind of in charge of it.
I'm in charge of him.
That means you're in charge of it.
You ready to get started?
Whenever you are.
Okay, I'm going to head up.
The key to my
They're
success.
gonna Good afternoon. What a great group to just quiet down as soon as I take the stage. Welcome. I'm Nancy Merritt, Vice Chancellor for Alumni Relations. It's great to see you all this afternoon. And I'm so pleased you could join us for homecoming weekend, and especially for this event, the Chancellor's University Update. We hope you enjoy reconnecting with friends, former classmates, and faculty this weekend. In addition to celebrating, I hope you will also take part in the many enlightening events that are being hosted by the schools and colleges this weekend. I also hope that you'll make new connections and take advantage of your Pitt network, which now includes roughly 350,000 alumni worldwide. The PAA has many activities planned throughout the weekend, including our Blue and Gold Bash tonight from 6 to 8 in the Cathedral. This welcome event is open to the entire Pitt community, and we hope you'll join us for free food and family-friendly activities, followed by fireworks and the laser show at 9 o'clock. A full list of homecoming activities, I don't want to go through all of them today, is available at homecoming.pitt.edu. So with that, let's move forward with our program. I'm pleased to introduce the University of Pittsburgh's 18th Chancellor, Pat Gallagher. Chancellor Gallagher oversees a community of nearly 34,000 students and more than 14,000 faculty and staff members across 5 distinct campuses, all working to advance Pitt's legacy of academic excellence, community service, and research innovation. Chancellor Gallagher holds a bachelor's degree in physics and philosophy from Benedictine College in Kansas and a master's and PhD in physics from the University of Pittsburgh. Please welcome Chancellor Gallagher.
Thanks, Nancy. Happy homecoming. This is kind of like getting into a Southwest flight. I should tell you, all the good aisle and window seats are taken, so anyone coming in should move to the middle, take any available seat. And in practice for my future faculty role, the Q&A, I'll be asking you questions, and I'll start in the back. No, seriously, it's really exciting to have you here. This is the first time we've actually done this event since the before times, before COVID, and it just has not been the same. And so the energy on the campus, I hope you can feel it. There's a lot going on here, and it's really special when we welcome our alumni back here to reconnect with the university and find out what's going on here. So in all of the activities that Nancy laid out for you, why did you pick this one? You're going to have to listen to me talk about university performance metrics for the next several hours. I'm just kidding. Charts and graphs included. No, all joking aside, I wouldn't be allowed to do that. My microphone would stop working and Nancy would blame it on technical issues pretty quickly. But I did want to share with you a presentation that I gave to our Board of Trustees just a couple of weeks ago, because it does give you fairly quickly a snapshot of what's been happening at Pitt. So every year I have to give an update to our board, and it actually forms the basis of a report that I'm obligated to give to the governor every year, which summarizes the performance of the university over the preceding year. As many of you have probably heard, I announced in April that I will be stepping down from this role as soon as I've been replaced. And that search is now underway, and so we anticipate that'll probably happen next summer. So I wanted to take the opportunity with our board to share not only what happened in the last year, but to put it into some context, because a lot of what's happened at Pitt is a story of momentum that's been building. And while you can see that in the year-to-year numbers, it's really more powerful when you see a little bit of the trend. So you'll see some graphs, but their goal really is to show this story of progress over time. And of course, the main thing I'd like to do is move fairly quickly through this so we can get to the real good part, which is to have a discussion with all of you and let you ask the questions, and we'll move over here for that part of the application. So let me jump right in with the update. And we started by talking about our mission as a university, which of course starts with our academic mission to teach, to do scholarship. And one of the ways I share with the board is to look at the some of the progress indicators that are moving very dramatically, particularly how we measure progress, things like demand, our quality, and our academic outcomes. The demand for a Pitt education has become extraordinary. At a time when you might be reading newspaper articles about falling demand at universities or falling admissions, we have set a number of records and then shattered it last year with a 53% increase in the number of applications for students seeking to come to the Oakland campus here in Pittsburgh. It was about 54,000 students applying for 4,000 positions. That's more than UVA. There's a lot of reasons we think this pattern is shifting across the country, but the upshot for the University of Pittsburgh is that this explosive growth is good in the sense that we're strongly positioned, that outstanding students want to come here, and we're likely not to grow the university in response to that. We're likely to end up becoming a bit more selective because you can't grow at this rate without undermining the quality of what we do here. Another story that's been looked at a lot is, what about international? Well, Pitt has never had an enormous international population except for our graduate professional programs where we draw students from around the world. And what's interesting here is the non-story. Most universities saw a dramatic collapse of international enrollment during COVID, and you can see that Pitt was seeing a slight decline, which actually mirrors what was happening in our graduate and professional programs, followed by a very strong rebound last year. The other part of the story on applications is what's happening in-state. The University of Pittsburgh is becoming a national university. We increasingly attract applicants from all over the country, and one of the questions I often get is, does that mean they're coming at the expense of students from Pennsylvania? And the answer is no. We saw a little bit of the decline again in the COVID years. We have seen decline in some of our regional campuses, but in fact we saw an incredibly strong rebound this year with a new record of a number of applications coming from Pennsylvania students. What has changed, for those of you like me who went here a long time ago, is where those applications are coming from. The demand now mirrors the population of the Commonwealth. So we now have more students applying from the eastern part of the state than we do from western Pennsylvania. Let me turn to one of the impacts of all of this growth and this national perspective, but as this occurs, we begin to look more like the country around us. And of course, one of the effects is in the area of diversity, racial and ethnic diversity. The university, we've just showed the trend here between white and non-white, but you can see that there's been a 10% increase in this change. And you should expect that the change continue to move in that direction, largely because the United States itself is moving in that direction. And as we draw students from across the country, you will continue to see us moving and becoming more diverse as well. What I will tell you is employers in the region love this, because this is a sign that we're drawing talent from around the country into this area. And of course, they hope that we capture them here and they stay here and have careers here. The other question I often get is, you're getting more, but what's the quality? One way we measure that now is we've moved away from using standardized testing as one of the sort of indicators of quality, because during COVID, that industry was strongly disrupted, and we also learned that there were some problems with standardized testing. You can pay test preparation, and so it actually correlated pretty strongly with socioeconomic status. And so a lot of schools have moved away from that. We are now test optional. And so we look now at things like the incoming GPA. What you will see is through all that change that we talked about, where we're drawing students increasingly from around the country, we're also attracting better and better students. As an alumnus, I always say, I wonder now whether I could get into Pitt. And it's kind of a point of pride as you see what's happening. But our freshman class this year had an average GPA of 4.16. That's a new record for the University of Pittsburgh. Let me also now turn to another aspect of our academic health, which is how do we support our students once they get here? And a key part of that support is financial aid. One of the things that we have done is invest in our students. So I was talking to our Pitt Alumni Association this morning, and I asked them, what do you think the fastest growing expenditure is for the University of Pittsburgh? It's financial aid, by far. And so over the last 10 years, it has grown over 100%, which means that while the news tends to talk about the tuition going up, the amount that has gone back into financial aid means that the net cost per student has actually fallen during this period of time. So our affordability has actually improved, which is really a significant step. Let me show you on the next slide what that increase in funding has done. So first, it means that the number of students who get financial aid has increased, essentially doubling. We now reach more students with financial aid, and on the next slide, you will see that the average amount per student has also increased. In fact, if you include the preliminary data from this year, it's up 144%. So the effect of that is we have lowered what is called unmet need. So this is the amount of financial aid need that the federal FAFSA form identifies for students, and it's down 15% over this period. If you look at student indebtedness and other key indicators of affordability, we're seeing a similar trend. So at a time when the country is talking a lot about the affordability of higher education, while we have not gotten a lot of support from the state to provide that, the University of Pittsburgh has made it a top priority to invest in our students over this period of time, and we are really beginning to see that. One of our innovative programs that you may have heard about in this area is called Panthers Forward. This was specifically designed to address the question of debt-based need, and what we asked students was, instead of signing a promissory note to a bank to pay back a loan, what if you made a pledge to the University of Pittsburgh to donate back to the university, to pay it forward? And what we would do is give a $5,000 debt forgiveness grant at graduation. So it's financial aid coming at the end of your time here. So it is provided at this point now. We're in our fourth year, almost $4 million of student debt relief, very direct, 600 participants. And the best part of this program, since I'm speaking to alumni, is creating that culture of paying it forward is all about creating a connection. So the heart and soul of this program is linking our Panthers Forward students to our alumni so that networking support, that encouragement, and that sense of belonging that supports that willingness to pay it forward is there. And we're really excited about that program going forward. Another measure of success we watch very closely happens after graduation. We do a survey 6 months after graduation to look at whether our undergraduate degree earners are placed. And what that means is working, continuing their education, serving in the military, starting a business. We've always had a very high placement rate at the University of Pittsburgh. 94% was sort of the number that never seemed to move, until this year when it jumped up to 97%, probably reflecting a very strong job market and high demand for talent that we're seeing around the country. But this is a great sign, and it was true. This is from the Pittsburgh campus, but this was true across all of our campuses. Another thing we look at very closely is student recognition. Obviously, this is recognizing our elite students. This is kind of by the numbers, but Pitt has become a leading producer of some of the highest student honors that can be earned, including, of course, the Rhodes. I recognize Nathan Urban sitting here, one of our other Rhodes scholars. Schwartzman Scholars, Truman, and then up to the Fulbright Scholars, where Pitt now has recognition of being one of the top Fulbright producers in the country. And, of course, the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellows Program. So we're very proud of this. And as our Honors College continues to grow, this is where a lot of those students are supported and nurtured through that process. We are expecting to see even more activity on the honors side. This also happens with alumni. So let me talk about alumni accomplishments. We have really enjoyed, and I've enjoyed watching the success of our alumni. It's one of the real fringe benefits of being a chancellor. And here, when I first got here, we're welcomed a MacArthur Genius Award. That's the winners of the MacArthur Foundation are known. We've also had a CNN Hero recognition. You all know about Aaron Donald, NFL Defensive Player of the Year, national prizes in poetry, presidents of countries, advisors to presidents. You can see there's just an enormous amount to be proud of. I'm going to highlight the last one because you may not be familiar with it, but Miss Virginia. So she's having an incredible year. Her name is Victoria Chua. She graduated summa cum laude from Pitt in May with a bachelor's and a master's degree in computer science, which she completed in 4 years. In June, she competed for the title of Miss Virginia and won, and she will be competing for the Miss America contest later this year. So whatever state you're from, I suggest we all go Pitt proud and cheer her on for Virginia. On the ranking side for the university continues to distinguish itself both nationally and around the world, being recognized for our scholarship, for specific schools and programs, specialty areas, and in our international reputation in areas like research and tech transfer. And I'll come back to that a little bit in the future. But I wanted to single out one for you that is kind of brand new, our global standing. Pitt is a very strong global university. And one of the ways that we do that is through our University Centers for International Studies, USIS. These are programs that have deep scholarship in those countries of interest, in the language programs, and the way they're recognized is not through magazines that rank them. They're recognized through the Department of Education through a funding awards process which recognizes a small number of these centers and grants them funding up to $11 million. So we're always very proud of we have 6 centers here at Pitt. Our most recent is our Center for African Studies, which is only a few years old. And typically when you go in and compete, there's only 8 or 10 or so awarded nationally. You might win a handful of these. We had a clean sweep this year, which means the University of Pittsburgh is one of only about 3 universities in the country that has all of their international centers recognized as centers of excellence by the Department of Education. A really remarkable accomplishment. It's homecoming weekend, so I would be remiss if I didn't share some of the success on the athletics front. It has really been a great time for Pitt Athletics as those programs continue to build and realize what our athletic director calls the gold standard, comprehensive excellence in the classroom, in the community, and of course on the field of competition. And our student athletes have really risen to that. And of course, you all know about our football team taking home the ACC championship last year. Everyone in Pittsburgh is talking about Kenny Pickett. But I also wanted to note our men's soccer team ranked, advanced to the College Cup, which is soccer's Final Four 2 seasons ago. Our women's soccer currently ranked number 2 in the country, having a banner year. Women's volleyball, once again, top 10 program. I think the latest ranking is number 9th. They were in the Final Four last year and have won 3 of the last 5 ACC championships. It's great that we don't just have one program, but it really does seem that winning is contagious. I wanted to mention the Chinazi Endai, the 3-time All-American volleyball player who was part of all 3 of those ACC championships in volleyball. She recently earned an NCAA postgraduate scholarship award to help her pursue her dream, which is to go to medical school. And so I just want to show these students are working hard in a lot of ways sometimes that we don't see, not just on the field of competition. Campus life encompasses a very broad set of activities, but you can think of it as the environment in which all of this academic success takes place. The built environment, all the supporting services. Our students live with us, and their success is really enhanced by the quality of that experience. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of what's happening, some of which you will see around campus. First of all, let me talk about facilities. One of the things we did a few years after I arrived is launched our campus master plan. I wish that was a magic thing that when you announce the plan, the buildings would instantly show up. That would be really cool because you wouldn't have all the construction you're currently seeing on site. But of course, it doesn't do that. What the master plan does is it takes a 30-year look at what Pitt could be, and it paints one possible future for us. And the purpose of that was to make sure that we laid out our priorities far enough in the future that we could plan around it, and furthermore, that we could engage the communities around us. Pitt is part of the city of Pittsburgh, and we felt it was really important to have a tool that painted that vision so that we could work with the neighborhoods and communities around us. But that facility master plan is now coming to life. We've used it through the city in their process called the institutional master plan. We're in zoning, all the difficult things that happen to turn buildings. And this long project list, which I don't expect you to go through, is beginning to be realized. One of the first projects that has gotten to the groundbreaking on this is our Wellness and Recreation Center. This is going to be on O'Hara Street, so this is right across the street from the School of Engineering, right where that parking lot and the old LRDC building used to be. It's going to be a spectacular 9-story facility that's not just about recreation and fitness, but also wellness space for the clubs, for student activities, for nutrition, for meditation, for music programs. One of the areas of highest need on the campus is this kind of space for our students. And it's on a fast track. It's a very difficult site, and it has the interesting feature of connecting the upper and lower campus. So you're actually looking at this as if you were standing up on the hill on the upper campus looking down towards, so there's an entrance up on that hillside, so you could walk to the Peterson Event Center very easily from this direction, and then several stories lower would be the entrance right on O'Hara Street. So we're excited about this. The other project that we'll be starting at some point soon is the Victory Heights, which is a set of projects designed to modernize some of the facilities needed by our athletics program. We have some programs who have not seen a facility change since the 1950s, and we have certain teams that do not have a facility at all, including our track team. So we have a lot of pent-up need there. This Victory Heights, the Sports and Performance Center, is designed to replace what we use the Fitzgerald Fieldhouse for quite a bit today, a storied but unair-conditioned and now obsolete facility. So this will be home to women's volleyball, gymnastics, wrestling, and actually 16 of our 19 teams will train there, so it's a major part of our program. The regional campuses have not been left out, and on those campuses, the projects are really designed to help them position to providing the kind of academic training programs that are in demand. So we've added facilities for things like engineering specialties, nursing, and information technology. And we've been doing all of this upgrade in a very responsible way by embracing the latest technology, despite the fact that we've added square footage. The energy intensity on the campus has dropped. Our greenhouse gas emissions have dropped, something that's very important to our students in terms of our environmental responsibility. We've been able to do a lot of that by integrating a lot of those goals into our campus planning. We've also used sustainable landscape design. We've reduced food waste, and we remain on track to meet a sort of a net carbon zero goal in an urban campus by 2037, which is pretty remarkable. Let me turn to research. So it's no secret that the University of Pittsburgh is a research powerhouse. It's a major priority for our faculty. It's a major object for our graduate programs and for our undergraduate experiences. And we are one of the leading research universities in the United States. One measure of that is funding, and the reason for that is it enables the research, but it's also awarded competitively. So our faculty have to go compete. Our annual research expenditures have grown every year since I've been here. We're up 53% for last year, and we crossed a unique milestone this year where the total research expenditures of the University of Pittsburgh surpassed $1 billion. And that puts us in very rare company. For Pitt, the predominant sources of funds are federal, but I want to note, Leo, I'm looking at you, our industry funding has grown 119% over this period of time. So we're excited about that, and we'll continue to focus on that growth. To put you a little bit in what company this puts us in, if you rank the expenditures of the top universities in the United States, we would be number 15th on that list. You'll notice a couple enormous ones at the top. They have federally funded activities there that at Hopkins and Michigan that really kind of skew that scale. But you'll see that we are just behind a number of the Harvard, Stanfords, Dukes, and Cornells. We're very close to that, and ahead of A&M, the University of Maryland, Yale, and the University of Texas. So extraordinary company. One of the other things I'm very excited about is that not only is our research producing scholarship and papers, but that knowledge is increasingly being turned into ideas, products, and companies. We've really focused on expanding the commercialization activities of the university. Since 2015, researchers have submitted over 300 invention disclosures a year. Patents issued by the University of Pittsburgh are up 42%. And again, we're gaining international recognition now. In the National Academy of Inventors and Intellectual Property Owners, Pitt has climbed the list of top university recipients of U.S. utility patents, now ranked number 18th in the country with 104 patents. We were just a few years ago in the high 20s, and that means since 2019 we have now passed Columbia, Duke, Northwestern, and Case Western in that. And we're just one behind Cornell, so great progress there. The other area of research that you may not be aware of that Pitt has become highly regarded for is what is called community-engaged scholarship. What does that mean? Well, that's the kind of scholarship or research that you actually have to work in partnership with the community. So if you think of healthcare or economic activities or legal services or any kind of work or research where the activity depends on partnership with the community, including many of our educational activities, you have to have a capacity not only to know about the research area, but to be able to work with the community. We have created essentially neighborhood-based extension offices that we call community engagement centers. They have become a focal point for collaboration in these neighborhoods. One is in Homewood, the other is in the Hill District. And we see a rapidly growing domain of university research and service focused on those. And we're attracting top faculty from these areas that want to leverage those capabilities in our communities. This is important because, the effect of a university is certainly felt by the students who went there, right? We know they earn a diploma, and that's great, but the public also has to benefit from the presence of a university. A city that has a university should be better off for having that city. And we know that here. In Pittsburgh, that's a very visceral thing. We've seen this city reinvent itself from a city of heavy manufacturing to one of eds and meds, of healthcare and data and technology. But it's important that we focus on that. So let me talk a little bit about our annual impact now. We do an annual economic impact report. Since 2014, in that year we generated $3.7 billion in direct economic impact. So that's expenditures and employment by the university. This last year it was $5.2 billion, up 41%. That means the number of jobs supported and sustained is up 70%. We're essentially supporting 47,000 jobs. That's more than we have employees, as you might expect, and we generate more than $271 million in local and state taxes, something I'm sure you can be sure I remind our lawmakers of every time I'm asking for their support in Harrisburg. What's also interesting is how much our alumni drive this. Just looking in Pennsylvania, We have 197,000 Pitt alums that live in the state, who contribute to their communities, who work, who grow businesses, pay taxes. That means 1 in 32 workers in the state is a Pitt alumnus. And so we really are the engine behind the state's growth, which we're very proud of. The other way this community contributed was in responding to need. And of course, COVID provided sort of a remarkable opportunity. And Pitt stood up in a big way with volunteering many, many hours to provide vaccination clinics to our community. Volunteers were essential to these clinics, all the way from giving the shots to directing traffic and counseling. We had over 1,800 members of our community volunteer. It was led by our health science schools, especially I want to call out our School of Pharmacy, but it really drew from across the university. And in other ways that we stepped up, that included training health workers to address the shortfall, our IT skills, our computer health desk was offered to the community free of charge to support all of those kids that were trying to Zoom into their classes. We provided free and low-cost broadband to our communities, including beaming broadband off the top of the Cathedral of Learning. And I think it just goes to show the incredible generosity and commitment to our region that our university has. I reminded you at the beginning, I was talking to our board, so let me talk about our financial and operations side, because I know this is the most exciting part of my talk that you wanted to hear. But the takeaway actually is really important. This is a time when in higher ed, a lot of schools are in trouble. And a lot of what you read in the paper, a lot of what schools are asking for funding and support is because they're trying to address a shortfall, a deficit, a problem. We can't say that at Pitt. Pitt is in incredibly strong financial shape. And I want to tell the story of that so you understand how that happened. One way to do that is to look at where does the funds come from that we use to operate. One source of funding that you've probably heard more than you wanted to hear about is the appropriation from the state of Pennsylvania. That appropriation has one purpose, which is to provide the funds so that we can offer a lower tuition to Pennsylvania students. You may think, because we've been in crisis about this issue, that this had fallen off, but in fact, you can see year over year, we've actually seen an increase from the state, which is tremendous. It's one of the longest stretches of continuous increases in support that Pitt has ever had. That's the good news. The bad news is that over this decade, we've only seen about 13% increase, which when you correct for inflation is really closer to flat. So while we're not losing ground on this front, we haven't gained ground either. The next source of funding, of course, is what we charge in tuition. And of course, that's a primary source of revenue, particularly when state funding is relatively low. Remember, the state funding only accounts for about 6% of our total revenues, so we're lightly subsidized. What's the story on tuition that I want to point out is that newspapers will write about the tuition increases, the sticker price, if you will, for the university. And those have increased 27% during the time I've been here over the last 10 years. However, as I mentioned before, the amount we spend on financial aid has gone up 62%. So when you look at the difference, the net, the amount of revenue we actually get from tuition has only increased 17% over the full decade, which again, when corrected for inflation, means that we have not increased that at all. And as I pointed out earlier, we've been able to put more and more resources into supporting our students. So it's kind of a mixed picture there. One source of support that has become more important is our endowment going to work. So we've enjoyed strong support, including during the COVID years, of support for the university through gifts and donations. Over this period, new gifts and commitments are up 138% to the University of Pittsburgh, and last year was an all-time record for the University of Pittsburgh in terms of support. One measure that's really important to us is not just the gifts, but it's the first-time donors. They're the future gifts to the university, and this has been a big focal point, and I'm excited to see that we've really, despite some up and downs during the COVID, have seen a very strong rebound and increasing the number that are engaged with the university. This doesn't matter how much you're giving, this is just engaging and participating. Our Pitt Day of Giving is our signature event there. And on the major gift side, which is where the financial, these are gifts over $100,000. You can see there's been a steady increase and almost no impact of COVID, which is kind of remarkable. On what's called the transformative gift, I think they're running out of adjectives to talk about larger and larger gifts. So a major gift is over $100,000. In this business, a transformative gift is over $10 million. So I know if you are here for that, just see me after this talk. But since 2014, the university has received 9 of those. But 7 of those 9 have occurred in the last 2 years during a pandemic, which is very encouraging. So again, the momentum is very, very strong. For me, the philanthropy, look, I presented it as part of our budget. I need to tell you, we don't really think of it that way. The act of giving back to your university, whether it's your wealth or your time or your interest, is one of participation. And it's supposed to be as good for the donor as it is for us. It's a partnership. It's about being able to participate, to shape, to help students, to sponsor a leading faculty member, to make a difference. And the real story of philanthropy is told through those stories about making the university a better place, giving more people the opportunity to go here, and supporting that. So I don't want to leave you on a budgetary note on this discussion, because that's really not the way we think about it. My goal today was simply to stir your pride a little bit. These are tumultuous times. I'm not going to kid about that. There's a lot happening in higher education. It seems like a day doesn't go by that I'm not reading a new article in one of the big papers about something crazy happening on a university, or some school in trouble, or something happening. It's become an issue that raises itself sometimes not directly about the mission, but about the things on the side that can happen, or the things that can go wrong. A great university like Pitt is not immune from that. I always say, we don't live in an ivory tower, even though we're probably the only university in the country that has one. The job of a university is to be immersed in the turbulence of the day, because that's where all the big problems are. And you want your university in there, struggling with it the same way we all are, to contribute, to advance, to train, to teach, in the end, to make the world a better place through knowledge. That's why we're here. That's the basis of the social contract that supports it. This university, despite the times we face, which are going to be crazy, and my successor will find out, I don't think that's going to go away, is facing all of this from a position of incredible momentum. This university has gained a reputation as a university that's going places, that people want to be part of, that's on the move, and I think that's exciting. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is, I just shared with you how I conveyed to our board the achievements of the university, and I see some of our trustees in the room here right now. But I'm going to tell you a little secret that I told our awardees last night. Of all the ways you can measure a university, its worth, there's only one that matters, and that's through the lives of the people who went there. So our alumni are the measure of the university. And so it really begins and ends with all of you. And I will tell you, as we celebrated the achievements of our alumni last night, as we keep hearing about the amazing things that they're doing, the difference they're making, building new futures, new businesses, new opportunities, serving the world, I could not, one, be more proud of this university that I am, but I have to believe this has got to be one of the best universities in the world if we have alumni doing that. So with that, hail to Pitt, and I'll look forward to our discussion. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chancellor Gallagher. We do have a couple people walking around with microphones, so if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand and they will walk the mic to you. But to kick us off, we also, during the registration process for this event, we asked people to submit questions for the Chancellor as well. And so
You screened out all the hard ones.
well, I thought a good one to start with, since your presentation certainly was reflective of, how Pitt has improved over your tenure. When you reflect on your time as Chancellor at Pitt, what is the thing you are most proud of?
Well, there isn't one thing, so that's always the hardest question to get. I think for me, I've always been kind of a mission person, right? Why do we do this? Why is there a university? Why do we, And it has to do with the fact that we're trying to make society and the individuals in it better off through knowledge. That's why we create knowledge and we study things and we train and educate. So for me, it's always come down to a story of impact. And I think for me, the most satisfying thing in this experience has been to live vicariously through a community of 50,000 people doing some of the most astonishing things you can imagine. And that's a real privilege and pleasure. But the other one I touched on is, I think Pitt has reasserted itself in the region. And I think there's, this Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth, increasingly looks to us to be leaders. At one time, Pittsburgh was, the city of big companies who made things, and the decisions were made in the smoky back rooms where those business leaders met. Today, that's your chancellor and other nonprofit leaders are having those same discussions. So the role of this university in the region has really grown. And I think that's been the biggest surprise to me, just how important that is here. But I'm really proud of it. I think this region loves Pitt. And they depend on it. And that's a very real relationship here. And I think it's, it's exciting to have that mandate, but it's also a responsibility that I think we have to live up to and make sure that the whole region continues to benefit from our presence.
Thanks. I will move ahead to our next question.
I guess the charts did not stimulate
I know,
a
right?
lot of great discussion.
So this one came in from an alumna, Kenda Hammer. What collaborative recommendations do you suggest for your successor and alumni to work on together?
Well, anybody who comes into this role who doesn't reach out to the alumni will probably not be successful. Universities are interesting. I came from government, which I thought was hard, right? Because you have all these constituents that you're trying to serve. But what's interesting is that's true, but within your agency, it's pretty focused. At a university, the constituents are just as diverse inside as they are outside. And the alumni are a central constituency for a university. So you actually can't be successful if you don't work with the alumni. They're like an extension office of your impact, and they reach places that you can't reach in this role. But my one bit of advice would be to move beyond the performance side of that engagement, right? So I think it's great to talk, and I think it's great to go out and visit our alumni. It's great to do things together. But I think the real impact is going to come in rolling up our sleeves and actually doing some things together. So we were having a discussion earlier. I'm looking at Leo again. One interesting thing about a university is that its impact, the difference it makes for its graduates doesn't happen when we give them the diploma. It's nice to think that was the case. You get this piece of paper and everything's set. And of course, that's not what happens. That diploma signals you completed something, and then that value, whether it's your career, your happiness, what you're allowed to do, the options you were given, that unfolds many years after graduation. In other words, it unfolds with the alumni. In other words, the value of the university is being created by the alumni, not by the students. And the universities can't just pass out the diploma and hope for the best anymore. With so many questions out there about the value of higher education and what role it plays, the universities have to lean into that. And I think the way that's going to unfold is universities working with the alumni, particularly in the recent graduates. Those first 5-6 years post-graduation are so critical to that success. If you graduate from the University of Pittsburgh, you should be able to walk into any city in the country, in the world, and be able to find other Pitt alum who share this experience, who can help get you going. And Rich and I have talked about this. In fact, he quoted me at the board meeting, which is always a little uncomfortable, Rich, but I said, a university, it's not enough to just come out with a diploma. You actually need to come out with 3 things: a degree, a goal, because you're thinking about what you want to do, and a network. And if you think about it, if any one of those things are missing, the success won't be there. So if you have the degree and no idea what you want to do, you can get lost. If you have an idea what you want to do and a degree and you don't have those around you that you can activate to help you out, it's going to be a very tough journey. And I think we need to pay as much attention to that network, the alumni network, and that goal formation that's happening when students are trying majors and working and doing co-curricular activity, and in that early postgraduate phase when they're in that early phase of work and are being employed but are not necessarily in their final career. So we have a lot to do, and I think if the alumni community, and Rich, I guess this is a challenge to you and the Pitt Alumni Association, find a way to work in very concrete ways with the next chancellor, I think we'll do some amazing things, and this partnership will just get deeper.
Chancellor, what's the atmosphere like on campus? What I mean is, where are the tensions? Where are the relaxations, if you will? In your opinion, what are our young people most worried about?
Well, today, if you walk around, you're going to see some focus on safety. We had, the students are back on campus at a density we haven't had before. And many of them have never received a crime alert. Here we are at an urban center, and so they're dealing with this for the first time. And but actually, that's not the concern. What I think the students are facing in terms of climate and concerns. By the way, these students are remarkable. I have to say, as a former student, I'm kind of in admiration for how seriously they take this and how hard they work. And they are committed to making a difference. They're much more active. I was in student government when I was a student, and the biggest thing we did was the social event of the year. And these students are tackling voter participation and safety and policy, and up and down the board, they're very serious. They want to be engaged and they want to make a difference. So part of it is fighting for that relevance. Remember, this is a generation that might, for the first time in modern U.S. history, be viewed as having less opportunity than their parents had. And I think that weighs on them very seriously, and it puts a lot of pressure on this educational experience to create those opportunities. So there's a seriousness here and a hard-working side. So they're always looking for the support and the services and the facilities, and that's why the Hillman Library, it seems crazy, but that building has probably never been more used than it is now. So there's a lot of demand for this kind of activity, and they want to belong. I think this idea of particularly with the pandemic rupturing all of that social connection, right? It's just not the same to see somebody on a Zoom screen, right? And particularly at that time of your life in young adulthood, those social skills and that social connection, and candidly, learning is a social activity. If it wasn't, we could just pipe the information over the internet and then people would absorb it and you'd be done. But in fact, it's the give and take, and it's working with others. And that omission that happened in their lives for 2.5 years has created a real need that has to be filled. And they're looking for ways to kind of regrow those muscles, reconnect. We've had students this year who are upperclassmen who've never almost had the normal on-campus experience. And so a lot of that, there's kind of a frantic energy to get it back. And kind of a license to maybe put it back in a new way. Maybe not just, throwback, but how do we maybe do it better? And so it's positive, but it's very focused on creating that sort of, I want to belong here, I want this to be my university, and I want to find ways in which I can make a difference.
We have time for maybe one more question from the crowd. Susan?
Hey, Susan.
Hi. You had mentioned about applications. Can you give us an idea about what the percentage is of out-of-state versus in-state and the tuition for in-state and out-of-state? And now that a lot of schools are not using the standardized tests, when you're accepting students, how do you weigh? Does diversity come in, where they're coming from? How do you make, because so many students are so good and they're all kind of on the same level.
Right.
Do you toss it up and pick out of a hat?
No, but there's this question of admissions, of course, is something that's is going to be with us for a while. And as many of you know, the Supreme Court is expected to rule on this later this year, and it'll probably have an impact on certain aspects of the admission process. Universities, the word you'll hear from Mark Harding is that Pitt does holistic admission, which means they look at a whole variety of indicators in student applicants, trying to do what candidly is probably a partially impossible task, which is to evaluate human potential and motivation and their likelihood of success. In the case of the test, remember when that standardized testing system came out, the idea made a lot of sense, that you've got all these different high schools and approaches across the whole country. If we gave them all a standard test, we would be able to sort of normalize that out and sort of, well, it turned out, humans are smart, and you can game that system, and you can prep your way into a high test score that, and so the meaningfulness of that standardized test score has been diminishing, and it's become increasingly criticized. In fact, as being not that predictive of success, which is maybe the most important criticism of all. What the admissions team looks at is a whole host of things, including academic preparedness. We do rolling admissions here, so unlike a lot of schools that wait till the end and then sort of, we're issuing admissions on the roll, and so who accepts affects, and so the criteria are not as hard as they are in schools that have sort of a fixed admissions window. The in-state, out-of-state per se is not a admissions criteria for the University of Pittsburgh, so we'd be more effective if the demand for that changed. So if the in-state students stopped applying to Pitt, that would certainly skew us more to be, towards an out-of-state mix. And some of that has happened not because the Pennsylvania students have dropped off. In fact, as I showed you, their numbers are up at a new high. But as we gain sort of a growing national reputation, we're just getting more applications from around the country. And so if you accept outstanding students across the board, you're simply going to see that pressure. But there's no one answer to the admissions question. And I have to tell you, I think this is going to continue to evolve. Remember, test optional itself is only a few years old. And so the very first students we admitted under that are still here. And we're still evaluating, did we learn what we thought we learned when we admitted them, in terms of their preparation? Do we need to put new academic support services in? The provost has put in an academy that's designed to, address any gaps in preparation across students coming from different backgrounds. Part of the answers we will see as we go forward, what effects these changes will have. But race is not an explicit admission criteria, but the applications include things like essays and grades and a whole set of factors that are looked at. Embedded in your question too is a really interesting question, which is maybe we can't do this perfectly, and I've always suspected, you might be able to evaluate part of this, and then maybe a random process on top of that would make sense. In other words, you form a qualified pool, and then out of that pool, maybe it is randomized a little bit. But no matter what happens, this tension of who doesn't get in and who does is becoming a growing problem for us. And I certainly never heard more from anxious students and parents than I heard this year when our application numbers soared like they did. That's a side effect of this otherwise good problem.
So I'm going to ask one last question before we end.
You want me to do it short? I can tell by the way you're looking at me.
A lot of people wrote in asking about the Chancellor search. So what can you share about the Chancellor search?
Well, it's the one thing I'm not part of, so it does make for a much shorter answer. What I will tell you is that it will happen in 3 phases. The first part that we're in right now is very public because the search committee's been charged, the Board of Trustees is in charge of this process, not the university. They support the process by putting together a search committee that has all sorts of constituents. It's a pretty big committee. What you want to do is before that committee starts screening applicants, you want to make sure that they have a good idea of what's most important to the university in terms of what they're looking for. And that's called the profile. And so what the committee is doing right now is a lot of listening. There's town hall meetings, there's a website. If you have ideas and you haven't participated, I really urge you to take the time to go on that website and share your thoughts. That's maybe the most important part of the process is that calibration of the search committee that happens from listening to students, to faculty, to staff, to administrators, and to alumni. Then what will happen is it will go very quiet because they're going to be in the market trying to identify potential candidates. Some of them may actually hold jobs right now, and so that is done confidentially. When it's not confidential, those people in positions don't want to take the risk of their candidacy being known, and so that tends to, I think it's good that Pitt does it in a confidential process. And then in the end, that committee will take all the applicants, they'll screen it down, they'll do 1 or more rounds of interviews, and there'll be a small number of finalists. And that tends to be more public again at the end. And I think there, maybe not in the large town hall style, but I could imagine the Pitt Alumni Association leadership and others being asked to participate in that process. So it's having gone through it on the other side, it's kind of unlike any other hiring process I'd been through. It's pretty intense, but it felt like matchmaking. And as I went through that process, I learned a lot about Pitt, and in the end, I think both sides felt like this made a lot of sense. And you want that to happen, and that won't happen if the community doesn't step up in the beginning and really articulate what's most important to the university. So,
thank you.
Again, it's been great. We are delighted to have you all back here at Pitt for homecoming. Happy homecoming, and hail to Pitt, everybody.
Thank you. And I will also add, in case you didn't already see in the schedule, it was added somewhat last minute, but there is a Chancellor's Search listening session happening back in this room in about 30 minutes. So if you'd like to participate in that, we would love to have you.
So I had the chance to plug an advertisement for it, and I missed.
I
Sorry
set
about that.
myself up. Thank you, everyone.